which is the new flashpoint between India and China boundary dispute. Why are we looking at another Doklam in making? And why does Shaksgam Valley matters so much for India?
Now, China has yet again claimed the Shaksgam Valley area of Jammu and Kashmir as its own.
And how China is trying to strategically claim it. When infrastructure becomes a tool of territorial assertion, borders are not just lines on the map. And China's statement on Shaksgam Valley is exactly this particular strategy. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to understand that why Shaksgam Valley is so important. What is the historical background, why China is making infrastructure there and claiming it to be their own territory, and how India is replying back to it. So let us begin with understanding that what exactly is unfolding. So basically, Chinese infrastructure construction started happening there not just this year. There have been certain portions of work that have taken place across previous years as well. And India went ahead and criticized the Chinese infrastructure which is present in Shaksgam Valley. Now, because of this criticism, China has replied back and said the infrastructure that they are building it in their own territory. That means they are claiming that Shaksgam Valley falls in their territory and they are outrightly rejecting any Indian claim over Shaksgam Valley which is present in Kashmir. Now, India has clearly responded again saying that Shaksgam Valley is an integral part of our own territory, and based on that we do not acknowledge any treaty has been done with the regards of Shaksgam Valley. Basically, they are talking about, Indian response is talking about the 1963 agreement that happened between China and Pakistan about Shaksgam Valley, where Pakistan gave the access of Shaksgam Valley to China. But India is saying that it is not Pakistan's to give to any other country. That is why this boundary agreement is illegal and invalid. And also India has gone ahead and called China-Pakistan Economic Corridor as rejected because it passes through Indian territory as of now. Now, all of this unfolding, now let us try to understand that why is this a cause of concern for India, what exactly is happening. So, for that we need to understand the location of Shaksgam Valley. When we are talking about Shaksgam Valley, first let us understand the clearly demarcated boundary of our own country so that we have a clear idea that which location is it that we are talking about. So, when we are looking at this particular boundary right in the north, we get to see that China is present, and here itself in the west we get to see that Pakistan is present. Now, this is our boundary and this is the Gilgit-Baltistan region. Now, when we are looking at the Karakoram range, this is where Karakoram range falls. And when we are talking about Shaksgam Valley, it is right here. It is right here, and we find that Siachen Glacier is located right here and Shaksgam Valley is located north of Siachen Glacier. Now, if you see this particular location, we clearly get to see that it makes a tripartite junction with not just China but also Pakistan on this side, because here we have POK, that is Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Again, territory of India. Now, in this particular context, you will also be able to understand that how this region becomes extremely sensitive. We have Ladakh, our union territory on one side, Pakistan occupied Kashmir on one side, and then we have China on the other side, making it rather sensitive. Furthermore, another thing that becomes important right here, that this forms the part of greater Karakoram mountain system. That is why the terrain here is very different, very difficult, and that is why we get to see that this is an extremely sensitive military wise terrain, because it is difficult to be in and it is difficult to be managed. To add to the complexity and also to the strategic importance of this very place, it is very close to the Karakoram Pass as well as I said, near India, China, Pakistan strategic tri-junction. Now, when we are talking about such an importantly located place, we clearly get to understand that how the importance of access of this location is for India and why India is claiming its own territory. Where we have marked, it has been defined, why China is claiming it. All of this needs to be understood. For that, let us move a little towards history and try to understand that what are the agreements that we are talking about. So when we are talking about Shaksgam Valley, we have to understand, based on the map itself, that this is a sparsely populated region, and this is still part of POK, but it was transferred by Pakistan to China back in 1963 as well. This was signed between China and Pakistan. India was not the party to this, and Pakistan ceded Shaksgam Valley to China. And India clearly said that Pakistan does not have any claim over that territory, that they are giving it to somebody else. They have no legal authority, and this area is part of our former princely states of Jammu and Kashmir, and that is why this agreement stands invalid. It does not hold any validity, and that is why it cannot be implemented. So if you look at it historically, this part has been marked in the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. It belongs to that, and therefore it is part of the Indian territory itself. And in this very context, we also get to see that why India has never recognized it. Because if it is our part, we have it, then why we get to see that another country is seceding it to another country. So that is why India clearly rejected the China-Pakistan boundary agreement. They have never accepted the Pakistan control over Gilgit-Baltistan, and also any territorial changes that they keep doing in the maps they are publishing about Jammu and Kashmir, that has never been recognized by India because it has been done without the consent of India. Now you have to understand the fact here that whatever is being done, especially between China and Pakistan, that is just a tool of territorial assertion and also aggression, so as to escalate. And you have to see that how it is running parallel with where China wants India to continue the trade, where China wants India to partner with it against US, where China is saying US is doing wrong, India is right in this context, where China is talking about RIC. But at the same time, on the other side, you will see China will mark Arunachal Pradesh as the core of interest, that they are interested, and they have placed Taiwan and Arunachal Pradesh in the same category. They are the ones who talk about Shaksgam Valley as if they're its own territory. And in all this context, this is where we get to see China's expansionist policy in real time. Now, this is the historical background, and after the infrastructure push that China is making in Shaksgam Valley, India has further gone ahead and clarified that Shaksgam Valley is part of India's sovereign territory. The entire union territories, when we are talking about Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, they are integral and they are inalienable. So when we are looking at this particular map, this is what is marking India's sovereign territory, and this is integral and inalienable. That is what has been defended by India, and that is why India has clearly also warned that India has the right to take any necessary measures that they would have to make sure that their interests are safeguarded. So their strategic autonomy in one perspective and also sovereignty of territory is maintained, and that is why India has constantly over the years protested against what China and Pakistan are doing to change the ground reality and any sort of infrastructure construction that takes place in such region by China. But this is where we need to understand that this is the main learning here, that sovereignty cannot be altered, because as we understand, this is our sovereign territory. It cannot be altered by a third party agreement. Just to give you an example, let's just say you have a house, you have the ownership of that house, and another party X and another party Y, they make an agreement ki, okay, this is my house, I transfer it to you. But how they can when they do not have any ownership of that house? So in similar context, sovereignty cannot be altered with any third party agreement, be it of your house or be it of our country in this very context. And China has again retorted back on this context, and they have said ki no, what India is saying is wrong. China has claimed that Shaksgam Valley belongs to China, and the infrastructure construction that they are doing, they are saying that is fully justified and they are doing it in their own territory. And the reason they are defending it with is the 1963 agreement and also the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a development initiative that has been taken up. When we are talking about this particular economic corridor, it passes through the Gilgit-Baltistan region, and again this is one where India has been clarifying, consistently protesting against and also rejecting, because this is against our sovereignty itself. So China is hiding behind these initiatives and agreements. And most important factor that we need to understand, that why China has all of a sudden decided to bring in Shaksgam Valley, the infrastructure, and claim that this particular area is their own. So first thing, it is about the timing. We get to see that infrastructure is being used as a tool of assertion. People don't need to say it, they need to make the construction, do the construction, and it would be perceived that that area is owned by them. That is why in that context, when we are constructing roads and logistics, this is about territorial consolidation. And this is the exact strategy that China is trying to use. China is also doing this very construction so as to ensure the protection of this economic corridor that they have come up with Pakistan, because if they have a proper northern alignment in Shaksgam Valley, then they will get to ensure the proper safety of China-Pakistan economic corridor as well. Furthermore, it is also related to the fact that they want to show support to their all-time ally, that is Pakistan. They want to consolidate the legal narrative that Pakistan is pitching about Jammu and Kashmir, how Pakistan believes that it is their own territory when it is not, and China, being Pakistan's friend, wants to stand with Pakistan's narrative that has been set up. And all of this, the construction, the timing, and supporting Pakistan is just about giving a signal to India. What is that signal? That they are trying to create pressure. Pressure where? We know about Arunachal Pradesh, we know about Aksai Chin. Arunachal Pradesh, as I said, in the recent US reports, it has been highlighted that China has marked their core interest in Arunachal Pradesh. That means the level they place Taiwan, the kind of expansion, the kind of control they imagine over Taiwan, similar control they are imagining over Arunachal Pradesh. When we talk about Aksai Chin, they have made so many maps where they have marked this region as their own. And especially since last decade, where we have seen multiple standoffs, be it Doklam, be it the Galwan Valley clash, we get to see that there has been a de-escalation phase that has come in, where we are trying to come back to the diplomatic discussion. But as I said, it is running parallel. China engaging with us does not mean that China is accepting India's territories and India's claims. So China is again behaving the way it does, the expansionist policy, the way it has operated, and it is not changing it any time soon. And this comes in the time of a global chaos that we are seeing, where US has already invaded Venezuela in its own way, where US is threatening Greenland, where US is threatening Iran, where US is threatening Cuba, Colombia, Russia-Ukraine war is given. And if any of this materializes, then China also will get legitimacy to push in all of these areas. So the geopolitical timing of all of this also needs to be considered, that why Chinese assertion has multiplied multiple folds all of a sudden. Now for further clearer understanding, let us go back and understand more about Shaksgam Valley, because when we are talking about this very particular valley, it is very important for us to understand that why it is being targeted. The reason it is being targeted is the fact that it is very significant in multiple dimensions. First, when we talk about military aspect, we have to understand that Chinese logistical depth, especially near Indian position, if China is making infrastructure here, you can understand the range they get across Indian territories. Furthermore, it integrates China and Pakistan's military and enables better coordination in this very place. and it also enhances the risk of two-front war, the theory that we talk about, making it a real thing, because this might be the very place where it might be executed. And that is why this place is being used to mount the pressure, especially on India. Other than that, we also have to understand that this is the very territory which also has a very economic and strategic role to play for China. It is important for their CPEC corridor, and this gives them an alternative trade route via Pakistan. Otherwise, China is dependent towards Pacific Ocean, towards South China Sea. So this opens an alternative for China, and that is why they get to see that their dependence on certain maritime routes reduces and opens up the alternative for them. So that is why they do not want any sort of Indian claim or Indian territory to consolidate and make sure that it is going away or there is a global order that is standing against them. Now these are the reasons why Shaksgam Valley is sensitive and significant for China. But at the same time, it is very clear that India cannot accept what China is claiming to be their own, because that will open a Pandora box of threats. It will open the threat where we will be circled by China and Pakistan. It will open the threat that where our territorial integrity would be compromised. If we accept Chinese claim on one territory, it will undermine India's any claim, be it over JNK, be it over Aksai Chin, be it over Arunachal Pradesh. So any acceptance, if it comes from India, it will not only weaken our stance, it will put us in undermining position which are being claimed by China. And any infrastructure, any construction and any consolidation of position of China in this area will be a threat to our national security. And that is why it is very important for us to understand that what the upcoming times might unfold. That means what are the consequences of this situation. So when we are talking about consequences, this is the point where the India-China ties, where we saw them repairing a little bit, they might take a downturn. They might start with diplomatic protests and statements, but India would also be on its toes with increased surveillance and infrastructure push on our end so as to ensure national security. Over the time, we might also see hardening of position in boundary talks, because when we talk about India and China, it's not that we have not had discussions over how these boundary disputes might be resolved, but China enjoys this strategic ambiguity to their advantage. That is why they have withdrawn from such agreements. They have decided not to share maps and come on the table and discuss. And that is what will cause a trust deficit between two Asian superhouses, because this is where we are engaging economically. We have resumed the trade, we have resumed the visas, we have resumed the tourists to Kailash Yatra. But at the same time, we cannot ever trust China in any context. And in the long term, Shaksgam Valley will remain a permanent flashpoint. That means it will be like a Doklam-like situation might unfold at any point of time. And that is what will bring the reinforcement of bloc-based geopolitics, where China and Pakistan are emerging as one singular bloc and India is placed on the other side. Now that was all from my side. When we are talking about conclusion in this situation, we have to understand that this dispute is not a standalone issue. It is a very broad issue about how China has been using strategic ambiguity, infrastructure push, and using that to create an amount pressure on India. And that also highlights that even though we have been having a diplomatic thaw, we have been engaging again economically, but the territorial disputes remain unresolved, and China and India, especially on border disputes, remain as far as it gets. Now that was all from my side. Thank you so much.